I'm not a toy you can destroy. Stop your silly games, 'cause I am just not falling into your shade. I'm not a toy you can control. Been there, done that, you're just a psycho. Oh, you're a kind boy. I follow my intuition. Surviving is my reason, zero contact is my mission. Absolutely no submission. Oh no, 'cause I'm not a toy for you to control. I'm not a toy to have your way. I'm not a toy to fall into your chains. I'm not a toy for you to destroy. Oh no, 'cause I'm not the giant. Can't do any harm. I'll figure out this puzzle. I can't take the hassle. Want this to be my best year. I've uncovered your mask. You can't do any harm. Your love bombing has expired. I've uncovered your mask. You are running out of time. It's the end of your scripted line. Absolutely no submission. Oh no. Sound with control.
All right, counsel, we'll line up the jurors and get them down. Being brief.
The Commonwealth is present, represented by Assistant District Attorneys Patrick Hagan, Mark Lee, and Teresa Anderson. Good morning, Your Honor. All members of the jury are present.
Good morning, counsel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me inquire of all our jurors, since you left yesterday, whether any juror has discussed this case, read, heard, or seen anything about this case, or had any contact with the case outside of court. If you have, would you raise your hand? And seeing no hands raised, I find this jury remains indifferent. And that is the last time that I'm going to make that finding, because I expect today that we will hear the closing arguments of the attorneys. Then I will instruct you in the law. And then 12 of you will commence deliberations on the evidence in this case. At that point, you'll no longer be indifferent. By that I mean you'll begin to form judgments about what facts have been demonstrated by the evidence, and applying the law to those facts, determining through that process whether the Commonwealth has met its burden of proof as it relates to the various charges and the elements of each charge in this case. So understand, you will begin to form judgments as a group on the evidence today, and at that point, you are not indifferent. You must remain indifferent, however, as to all extraneous matters, all outside information, because, as I will instruct you, and as I've told you before, you can decide this case only and solely based on the evidence you've heard in this courtroom during the course of this trial, and on the inferences that you draw from that evidence, but not referencing anything else, anything outside of the evidence. Now recall what I told you at the outset of this trial. It seems so long ago, but when we first assembled as a group here to commence the case, I instructed you on what constitutes evidence and what is not evidence. And in just a moment, we turn to counsel for their closing arguments. A closing argument is the reverse side of the opening statements that you heard. Remember, I told you an opening statement was a preview of what the attorneys expected the evidence might show or might not show. A closing argument now is the attorney's opportunity to review the evidence with you and to argue to you, that is, attempt to persuade you as to what conclusions you should or should not draw from the evidence as you've heard it. In a closing argument, counsel may argue the evidence that has been presented. They may reference the evidence, that is, the testimony of the witnesses, any exhibits that you've seen, and suggest to you what that might show. To the extent any attorney in their closing argument states the evidence different from the way you recall it, understand your memory controls. That is, you determine what the evidence has meant and what it shows, and no one else. And that applies to anything counsel may say about witnesses or testimony or exhibits, and indeed anything I may say, because you and you alone are the finders of fact. And counsel may argue inferences from the evidence, that is, conclusions that flow reasonably from the evidence as you've heard it. But counsel may not engage, nor may you in your deliberations, engage in speculation or conjecture in the context of that evidence. Any inference must be based on the evidence as it's been presented and must be reasonable. Are not permitted as advocates to express any personal opinion about the evidence in this case. Rather, they may state it, they may suggest why it may be believable or why it may be flawed, but they cannot express their own personal views nor argue anything that was not presented during this trial. The way I intend to proceed is as follows. In a criminal case, the first closing argument is given by the defense. And so in just a moment, we're going to turn to Mr. Baez for the closing argument on behalf of the defense. At the end of that, likely we'll take our morning recess and then hear a closing argument from, I think, Mr. Hagan on behalf of the Commonwealth. After those two closing arguments, likely we'll take our lunch recess, and then I will give you formal instructions of law after lunch, and then, time permitting, 12 of you will commence deliberations. So that's the sequence of events for today. And with all of that said by way of preamble, let us turn now to the defense for the closing argument on behalf of Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Baez. Yes, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I have the unique honor of going first, but it's not by choice or a coin flip. The reason I'm going first is because the state is the party with the burden here. And you can recall we've discussed that ad nauseum. And I'm going to keep going at it and keep mentioning it because I think it bears, and it's worth mentioning. But I promise to try my best to not be repetitive. The other task that I'm faced with, and that is to be able to cover what we've gone over the last several weeks, and to make sure I remember every single thing that relates to reasonable doubt. Now, what's important to note is while we try our best to be good lawyers, both sides, the case doesn't always come out exactly the way we anticipated it, because it's not a scripted event. But of course, before I begin, I want to say on behalf of both sides, we thank you for the attention that you've shown every witness in this case and the commitment you've made to justice. It's no small thing to leave your lives behind and to sit here in judgment of facts. And we all, both sides, I think, have discussed and commented how proud we are to be a part of this process. So having said that, I'd like to begin with what I told you at the very beginning of this case. And that is that there is absolutely no evidence that Aaron Hernandez committed this crime. What was scary, if you recall when I mentioned in the very beginning, how easy it appears to be able to be charged with such serious crimes. As Clerk Sheehan read the charges the first day during jury selection, and we sat there, and you all sat there and heard these awesome charges. How it would actually unfold in the courtroom would be a completely different way, a completely different manner. I want to start and dive right into what the facts are, okay? And I begin with where it all began, at the Cure Lounge. You will recall specifically that the evidence showed, and before I go any further, I want to tell you, please rely on your own memories. I'm going to show you exhibits, show you different snippets of the evidence, and recall certain things. But all my demonstrative aids are just that. They're demonstrative aids. They're for you're to rely on your memory, not on anything I say or anything that Mr. Hagan says. So please, I don't want you to get the impression that I'm saying this is exactly what happened. It is what we believe the roadmap that we've put together for you has compiled, okay? It all begins with the entry of Cure Lounge at 12:30 and 43 seconds. You may recall Aaron going down the stairs and coming up exactly 9 minutes later at 12:39:44. What transpired down in the Cure Lounge is the foundation of this case. It must be true. And you recall the whole issue of motive? You recall how it is not a required element of proof, but it is the foundation of a case. It is the why. Aristotle once said, everything that is done with an eye towards something else. Simply put, to understand the deed, look to the motive. Look to the why. And the why is really one of the most important things of this case. It's why we're all here. Why are we all here? Well, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts told you we're all here because of a spilled drink. And I think that there has been evidence after evidence after evidence submitted to you that shows you that that's not why we're all here. It shows you and proves to you that Alexander Bradley lied. He's many things, a perjurer and a liar. And I think that was proven here. Now you have to understand something. When it comes to cases and how they're laid out, we can only work with what we have. We can only work with what was done. And the fact that there are zero cameras, zero video of the actual inside of Cure nightclub should tell you something and should scream volumes at you. You recall Mr. Zaid Nabusi, and when he testified to certain things about having 16 cameras per DVR, but yet only 8 of them appeared. You may recall that the head of Cure Lounge is former Detective Miller Thomas, the president of the Boston Police Department's detective unit. They work hand in hand with the police, hand in hand. And if you recall one thing, every single piece of evidence confiscated in this case is done so in a selective way. There are procedures involved. All you have to do is look at the envelope, and every time an envelope was opened, it's signed, it's sealed with evidence tape, it's packaged, it's logged in. But yet all of these tapes are not logged in. There is zero chain of custody for the most critical and important piece of evidence in this case. You cannot let that lie. You cannot accept that. If this is the procedure, if this is the way it is done to preserve the integrity of the evidence, so when it comes to you, when it comes before you, you have to say to yourself, I will not accept that. And you should not accept that when there's something so mysteriously wrong here. Now, this case and the prosecution, the way it was presented to you, was really all about what they knew and didn't tell you. They knew about Jamie Furtado's photograph, but they didn't tell you about that. You will recall Antoine Salvador, the psychology doctoral student, who came before you. And here's the thing again. When this trial started, we hadn't found him. As you heard in the evidence, we found him in the middle of trial. The police had 5 years. 5 years to track this man down. And they came here and told you, after all this time, after all the investigation of flying all over the country to try and prosecute Aaron Hernandez, that they didn't speak to anyone who was in the club that night. Wouldn't you want to know what happened inside? What precipitated all of this? You start from point A to go to Z, and then therein you'll find the truth. Well, the truth was with this man, and he wasn't that hard to find. There was a photograph of him that they kept from you. They knew about this. Jamie Furtado, if you will recall, this man worked at Cure Lounge. He took that photo. He told the police about it. He took this photo, and they could care less about it. And you know why? Because it doesn't fit in with what Alexander Bradley says. Alexander Bradley was their three-legged pony, and they were going to ride him to the finish line. No matter what he said, no matter what lies he told, they were going to back him. And that's what unfolded every single day before you. The support, the rallying around Alexander Bradley and his lies. And it all began with point one. It all began here, downstairs in that basement, where this photo was taken, where this man told you, look, he was with me 5 to 6, 7 to 9 minutes, 7 to 10 minutes. He didn't have a dog in this fight. He's considered an independent witness. Mr. Bradley does have a dog in this fight. It's the deal of a lifetime. He's either there or sitting right there. And that's a big incentive. This man has no incentive to come to lie to you. And the Commonwealth is going to ask you, who are you going to believe? The drug dealer or the doctoral student? And that's what it boils down to. Ignore the obvious. Just believe our story. Just believe Alexander Bradley. And that you can't do. We're all sitting here, you've all come here to sit and objectively listen to the evidence. And there's been a lot of noise, we all know that. But this is actual evidence. This is proof to you from the very beginning, from the get-go, that he was lying. He said, Alexander Bradley said to you, well, first things first, we came in the bar, and Aaron went a few feet away from me. I could see him the entire time. He was close enough to where I could see him. And then his story just started falling apart from there. Paige Aiello, you remember her, the club goer, the frequent customer at Cure. She told you as soon as she got to the bar, that, which was right around 12:30, that Danny Abreu immediately came up to her. That's immediate. This is immediate. Antoine Salvador said he saw Aaron Hernandez walk down the stairs. And again, if you simply do the math, when we were haggling over all of this nonsense with the 9 minutes, in the 9 minutes, you got what, 30 seconds to go down the stairs. If I want to take Mr. Lee's stopwatch, I'll take those 30 seconds to go down the stairs, another 30 to go to the bar. Wait there. You have then Anton Salvador come up to you and say, hey, you mind if I take a picture with you? And he politely declined. Not the angry, standoffish guy that Alexander Bradley told you about, that they tried to paint Aaron as. No, he was good with fans. And he said, no. And then he said, can you please, it's my birthday. Sure, no problem. Then they went to Jamie Furtado, and they asked him, and Anton asked him, can we go in the back room and take a picture? No, you can't come back here. That's a private, closed-off area. And then Aaron came forward and said, can you please, it's his birthday. And he said he didn't want to be recognized, so he said, I played college basketball. They go back there. Jamie takes the picture. They come back. Anton then joins his friends and is all excited about his new picture with Aaron Hernandez. Then he goes back to him and offers him a drink. All of this, 5 to 6, 7 minutes. Clearly nothing's happening. Paige Aiello has already met up with Danny De Abreu. She didn't see any bumping or any incident at all. She knows who Aaron Hernandez is. She clearly would have recognized him. And none of that happened. And then you get up here, exactly to where we're at, and you see Aaron walking out calmly, looking at his phone, by himself. Not as Alexander Bradley told you. Not when he told you, I had to grab him and take him out of the bar, because he was going to kill him. That's absurd. It flies in the face of reality. It's an absolute lie. And you have proof. You have absolute proof that Bradley's lying. This doesn't come around every day. It's not that easy to prove a negative. And that's why the burden is always with the state. It's always with them, because it's impossible to prove a negative. But every now and then, a little luck will fall on your lap. You might get lucky where the police didn't go looking. They didn't go looking for this picture because they knew that they didn't want to go looking. How upfront and honest is that with you? That's not the type of professional police work that we expect. Not anywhere. And they didn't go looking for behind doors that they didn't want to go looking for, because they knew what they would find. This is why I submit to you that the police actually knew what was going on down there and what actually happened, and knows their famous saying, it's not the truth, but it's not a lie. The rallying around Alexander Bradley and his statements. You remember Detective McIsaac? It's not true, but it's not a lie. It's truthful, but inaccurate. What? How absurd. How stupid does he think we are? It's truthful, but inaccurate. That's what Alexander Bradley is. Truthful, but inaccurate. Because he's their pony. He's their case. He's everything and all they have, all they ever have, and all they ever will have. Because it's not true, but it's certainly not a lie. This is what they want you to believe. This is their case. This sums up the entire investigation as it relates to Alexander Bradley. And you see Aaron walking up by himself. You recall when we played the video, the first guy to walk behind Aaron is a completely different guy, because Bradley's downstairs doing his business. Now here's the thing. Clearly Aaron was out doing other things. Clearly you have evidence of that. While we have suspicions, and how we showed you how it appeared Danny De Abreu recognized Alexander Bradley, that's not our burden to prove. All we can do is point certain things out to you. We know this. We know that Alexander Bradley's a drug dealer. We know nobody crosses charade. And we know what kind of weapons he carries. And we know what kind of life he lives. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's Alexander Bradley. What he's doing in that club, the things he's up to, what happens when he gets upset, that's Alexander Bradley. So when you have Aaron coming up, still with the 2 drinks in his hand, he didn't even have the time to finish his drinks. And remember Bradley said, well, they could have been 2 other drinks. Well, wait a minute. You testified to seeing him and him being close to you and going to the bar only once. You recall that he said he might have gotten 2 more drinks in addition to the 2 first drinks that he ordered. And it gives you this whole story about Aaron buying 2 drinks. No, that's Aaron's drink and Bradley's drink. That's that simple. And what happens when Aaron comes out of the club? There's no spilled drink on him. There's nothing, 0, to indicate that anything has been spilled on Aaron. The Commonwealth wants to say to you, who are you going to believe? Us or your lying eyes? There's absolutely no proof that anyone ever spilled a drink on Aaron. To the contrary, there's proof of other things happening downstairs. Other things that clearly explain and fall perfectly within the timeline. And then some. You go downstairs, walk all the way to the other end of the bar, come back, order 2 drinks, take a picture with a fan, come back, have more interaction with him. All of this makes perfect sense. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen. From the very beginning of this case, from its inception, its actual core motive is all crowded with reasonable doubt. It's not sprinkled throughout this case. Reasonable doubt lives here. It lives here throughout this entire case, and it starts with the very beginning. Now, what happens after we go to, what does Bradley say happens after they leave the bar? Well, you saw the exchange, the video. You can speculate what they're saying. But one thing's clear. You see Aaron trying to cross the street and go to the other bar, and Bradley staying there. But I'm not going to even ask you to speculate on what was said or what wasn't there. They will, because that's the best they can do. They can't prove their case beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. So they're going to ask you to look at that video and speculate as to what's being said. Who's the angry one here? They're going to ask you to look at things. Only the video that's convenient for them. Not the missing video. Only what's convenient for them. Look at this and speculate as best you can. That's what they're going to ask you to do. I only know this, and this is not speculation. And that is that they go across the street. And Bradley tells you that once they cross the street, that Danny De Abreu walks across the street and goes to the other bar, along with Rashidi Sanchez. Now here's what's interesting. The 2 descriptions that Alexander Bradley gives are of these 2 individuals. Okay? One, we see there's something going on when Bradley walks by initially outside of Cure. And the other one runs from the scene and destroys his clothes, destroys evidence. These 2 individuals are who Bradley swears and tells you, tells the police that they went across to the other bar, and this enraged Aaron. This enraged him to the point where he had his angry face, his angry, I want to kill you look. You remember we went over this? After the fist pump, we went over this with Bradley, that This is Aaron's angry face, and Bradley's, well, yeah, he was mad. But you see Aaron laughing and carrying on. They're having a good time. He's trying to go on. And this is a lie. But for the Commonwealth, it's truthful but inaccurate. It's not true, but it's not a lie. This is what the lead detective is telling him. That the second Bradley told him that these two individuals went across the street to the other bar, that he knew it was a lie. They didn't press him on it. They didn't say to him, wait a minute. Under this agreement that you signed, you were to give complete and accurate information, not truthful but inaccurate information, not true but not a lie information. You're supposed to give complete and accurate information for you to get this deal. And you remember, we went through this whole agreement with the state throughout the cross-examination and throughout this case. But one thing came out for certain: they're gonna ride him all the way home. They don't care. They don't care that he comes here and lies. They don't care that he's lying to the police. They don't care from the very first step of the evening, that's a lie. The second step of the evening, that's a lie. They don't care. And that's outrageous. That's unacceptable. Any citizen accused in this country deserves better than that. That's not what we would stand for. That's not what you should stand for. Accepting lies. This tells you, he's not going to come up here. As great a lawyer, all the training I try to get in the world, as best as I could go at him, he's not going to come up here and say, you got me, I shot him. I'm the one that shot two people. He's not going to do it. Even if I threatened him with violence, the only language he knows, he's not going to confess. There's not going to be a Perry Mason moment, as much as I want to. So you have to look within some of his statements. And then you have to know, it's unacceptable for you to lie even once. It's unacceptable. It's like you go to a restaurant and you order a wonderful meal. If you find a bug in that meal, you're not going to take the bug out and eat the rest of the meal. You're going to send it back. And Judge Locke is going to tell you, when evaluating Mr. Bradley's testimony, you were to listen with caution and great care. Caution and great care. That's basically someone telling you, before you hear word one, stop and listen with great care and caution. This is unacceptable. This is reasonable doubt, because anything coming out of this man's mouth must be listened to with caution and great care. And it can't be not true, but not a lie, or any of this nonsense. This says it all. These first two steps say it all. And that's why you can't believe this. That's why this case has no foundation. It's like a house of cards where the slightest breeze will come by and knock it down. Those are the lies of Alexander Bradley. And you recall, as it relates to Bradley, there are other things that cause doubt here. And it's funny when we listen to law enforcement's attitude. You may recall how in the beginning of the trial we had the police telling you certain things at the crime scene. And something important happened with one of the police officers that I wanted to point out to you. And that is, you may recall there was a police officer, Sergeant McCarthy, who testified about some photos that he never saw. He said under cross-examination, no, I didn't see any blood over there. I didn't go over there. And then when the Commonwealth got up there and started asking him about these photos, they asked him, is it a fair and accurate representation of the blood that was there that night? He hadn't seen it. But he told you all, yes, it's a fair and accurate representation. Now I want to show you a small clip of his testimony. And remember, to rely on your own memory. This is not an official transcript. But let's play that for a moment here if we can.
You just told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that those photographs were a fair and accurate representation of what they depict.
They were.
Okay? But yet you didn't know that they even existed.
I knew there was blood droplets. I don't know the exact direction of the blood droplets.
Do you recall testifying on the first cross-examination that you were unaware as to whether a trail of blood was around the corner?
Yes.
Okay. And you just testified before the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, telling them that those photographs of the blood around the corner were a fair and accurate representation of what they depict.
They are.
Okay. But yet you did not see it.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
That's absurd. That's a police officer telling you, believe me blindly, I didn't see these photographs. I didn't see this blood, but it's fair and accurate representation of what was there that night. That's admitting evidence falsely. There is a culture within the police department that's saying it's okay to come here, to get on this stand, to swear to tell the truth, and lie. And it passes all the way down to this man. If a sergeant in charge of the crime scene is willing to come here and admit evidence to you that he has absolutely no knowledge about and lie to you like that, everybody's falling in ranks. And you can't accept that. That's not professional police work. That's unacceptable to any citizen accused, whether you're a football player, you work in a grocery store, or you're a banker or anything like that. It doesn't matter. That's unacceptable. And that's the culture throughout this case. That's the culture of deception that came before you throughout this entire case. And it's something that you don't know it until you actually see it. It's kind of like making sausage in our criminal justice system. Now you've had the opportunity to sit through a 6-week trial and sit there and say, you know, well, now that I've seen it made, I'm not so sure I want to eat it. That's exactly how our system is unfolding and how this case unfolded before your eyes. It's not with every case. Every case is different. But in this case, what you all saw was lies and a culture of deception, beginning from the scene that night, carrying throughout the deal with the devil. And that's unacceptable. Now let me take you to what happened next, according to Alexander Bradley and what happened that evening. You'll recall that 3 witnesses, we saw the fuzzy figures that went in the garage there at the Tufts garage. And you'll see it again, I have no doubt, during Mr. Hagan's closing argument. It appears the 2 figures go in the garage. But there's no video of what happened inside the garage. Why? Mr. Hagan will give you an excuse and say, well, they didn't go into camera range. But there's no video of that. That's the lack of evidence to support, again, what Mr. Bradley says. But you did have testimony by other individuals. You'll recall Andrew Wallace testifying that he saw Aaron over by the W. Mr. Scan and Baseliner himself, Ugo told you, and in fact, we have him at video crossing the street at 2:28 p.m. Exhibit 180 that you'll have access to when you go back, where he wrote AH on the screen and said to you, after this time, when I crossed the street at 2:28 a.m., I later on saw Aaron Hernandez. Even if you deduct the 3 minutes that the state says is the difference between the cameras, that's still a different time than when the two individuals are already in the Tufts garage. That's reasonable doubt, ladies and gentlemen. That's significant doubt when you throw Anton Salvador's testimony as well, who also saw him over there after the let out. You saw one let out through Cure, where all the patrons will come out and they start intermingling. They basically take the club outside and they try and see who's intoxicated and who wants to go home with one another. Well, across the street at the W, there's another club. Further on down the road, there's 2 more clubs. And that's what people are doing at that time. They're going through this area. And you remember Sean McCann, one of the very first witnesses who called 911. Do we have his photo? He testified to seeing Aaron right at the top. He testified to seeing Aaron speaking with 2 individuals later on that night. 2. That he was with 2 guys. He couldn't describe whether the person had cornrows or not, but he said something specific. And he said, yeah, I saw him with 2 people. There's a lot that you don't know because the state didn't go digging for it. We can only do so much coming into the case much later. The state had this case from its inception. They investigated a certain way, and they were not going anywhere that Bradley wasn't taking them. And that's a fact. These 3 witnesses all saw him over by the W right around that time that the missing video won't show you who actually went in that garage. Shadowy figures, looks like what they're wearing, maybe. They want you to squint like you're looking at a toast with Elvis on it. You know, don't believe the facts, the hard evidence facts. Squint a little, stretch, speculate, and then you'll see our case coming together. That's the Commonwealth's case in this case. That's what they presented to you. Instead of actual evidence, actual witnesses who were there, who have no dog in this fight. You know, you could argue maybe Hugo does have a dog in this fight. He works for Cure Lounge, who's run by the detectives. Now we get to the actual shooting and what people actually saw that night. I will tell you, one of the other interesting things that happened during this case is things developed as we were sitting in trial. While you were listening to some of this evidence of what doesn't tie Aaron to this case, you remember we went through a whole 2-3 weeks where there wasn't a single thing that related to Aaron Hernandez. While that was going on, we were uncovering and finding police officers. This man was the 2nd police officer on the scene, but they never called him to testify. Why? You heard so much testimony from irrelevant officers. People who didn't have anything to say. I didn't see the sheets. I didn't see who placed the sheets. I don't know who did this. I don't know who did that. But the one guy who saw something, saw a critical witness, Mr. McMaster, drive up on the scene first, before the police ever got there. That's a bombshell. And they hid him from you. They didn't want you to evaluate this evidence. It's not for your ears. You don't have any business knowing about what Mr. McMaster has to say. Why? Because he sees someone who looks like a female. We don't know whether it was a male or a female. None of the evidence came in. But we know it's somebody who either with cornrows, long hair, who looks like a female. Stand up. That's not this guy. That's not Aaron Hernandez. He doesn't have long cornrows. He doesn't look like a female in any stretch of the imagination. Even if you squint as hard as they want you to, you're not going to get cornrows from him. Brian Kwan took the stand. Now this is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. They called him to the stand. They got what they wanted. He described Alexander Bradley as the driver. A black male, light-skinned, or dark-skinned Hispanic, or a light-skinned black male. That's this guy. But they didn't ask him about the passenger. Why? Why is this information being withheld from you? Is that an honest and forthright prosecution? Is that the evidence that you came here, you left your lives for, to listen to? Half the story? That's absurd. And that's nothing you should stand for. When this man knows, this man was the closest to what happened, and he tells you long, shoulder-length cornrow hair. You know what they want to do? Mr. Hagen's going to come up here and say to you that these beads are cornrows. I guarantee you that's what he's going to do. He's going to come up here and say, they mistook these beads for cornrows, long shoulder cornrow, long shoulder-length cornrows. Squint hard enough. Speculate as much as you can, please. And that's what you'll find. You heard, there were little parts. When I was listening to the evidence, there were insinuations, and I'll bet you he's going to come up here and say that to you, that those beads are cornrows. That's what they want to pull. That's what they want to say, despite knowing this man, what they knew and didn't tell you. They knew what he saw, but they didn't want you to know it. They didn't want you to tell it. They didn't want to tell you. Same thing with Mr. McMaster. Same thing with Officer O'Donnell. This police officer saw a street sweeper. And we got so many up here. I didn't see a street sweeper. I didn't see a street sweeper. How many cops came up here and told you? I didn't see a I heard there was a street sweeper. There's a rumor. But I didn't see a street sweeper. What did they think? We weren't going to pull them out? How absurd and outrageous is this prosecution? How unfair. This is not justice, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't justice. Not the justice that you will dispense. Mr. Aquilino Freire saw the same female. What's the one thing that these three people have in common? They all saw a female-looking passenger with cornrows. They have nothing in common. They come from different walks of life. They don't know each other. They've never been in the only time they've been in the same room at one point in time, but never together. You recall I asked them, have you ever seen this guy? No, never. You ever seen this guy? Never. Did you concoct a story with these two individuals? Eyewitness testimony is not the most reliable, that's for sure. But when you see independent people who don't have a dog in this fight telling you the same exact thing, you have to draw some conclusions. And the conclusion is, ladies and gentlemen, that Aaron Hernandez was not in that car during the shooting. He wasn't there. And it's not our job to tell you exactly where he was or to prove to you where he was. That's this man's job. And he failed miserably. Miserably. This is as conclusive as you can get, with three completely different independent witnesses telling you the same exact thing. And this man telling you he's the driver. All of this doesn't lie. And here's the thing. We get from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. All of them are lies. All of them are lies. from the man who's not going to break down and tell you, yeah, I'm lying. Now, we get to the actual shooter, and you heard some significant evidence, specifically from Dr. Downs yesterday. Dr. Downs told you the angle of the shots from the passenger side is completely impossible based on the way Alexander Bradley told you. We did a forensic reconstruction of the scene from the injuries and worked their way out. He showed you the actual injuries and where they came from and the angulation and all of the different things that forensic scientists use to be able to uncover what actually happened, to tell us the truth. Because the science doesn't lie. The science is the only thing that doesn't have to take the witness stand and choose a side. The science is the truth. And scientifically, based on the way Alexander Bradley said this occurred, is impossible. Remember the whole angulation of the shot coming upward, which is much easier to do from the driver's side. Now, there was an issue of the BMW. And you may recall that Dr. Mustafi testified about some medical records, where Aquilino Freire specifically said that both of his friends were killed in a gunfight. Do we have a gun that was in the BMW? No. But again, that's not our job to prove. But there is specific doubt as to whether this actually occurred. Based on the actual injury of the wounds. Remember my Abercrombie Finch model over here, and how he put on this shirt and basically explained to you guys that Mr. Furtado's arm was placed in a certain direction. All this man would testify to is what the science is, nothing more. If he was a hired gun, he would have said, yes, his arm was pointed in this direction. I can say with a reasonable degree of medical certainty. But one thing he said it was consistent with being able, and the shirt matches up to the bullet holes. The science doesn't lie. What's beyond that, we don't know. And that's not what we try to do. We just try, it's our job to show you the entire picture. And we would be not doing our job if we didn't show you that this was a possible event. When someone's saying they're in a gunfight, someone in the BMW is saying that they were in a gunfight, Mr. Hagen's going to say, oh, his English wasn't that good. He testified the entire time before the grand jury without the use of an interpreter. He came up here and spoke English very well. And true, English is not his first language. But you also have this man leaving the scene, telling you he stood there at the crime scene and 2 police officers took his name. No, none that were called here to testify before you, but he's covered in blood. 2 police officers take his ID and his name. This man leaves too, Gerson Lopez. He flees as well. Both of these guys run. What did they take with them? Where did they go? Why are they destroying evidence? These are questions we have to ask. These are questions we must ask. And this is not a far-fetched conclusion. It's a possibility. It is doubt. And this is why we had to bring this evidence before you. Because they certainly weren't going to do it. They would never do such a thing. Why aren't they getting these individuals' phones? Mr. Sanchez told you he had 2 phones, but he just used them for selfies and whatever. But he didn't have a phone. That doesn't pass muster. That flies in the face of reality. It's not true. Then we get to the forensics. And I want to show you something that you probably don't remember, or you're going to have a hard time remembering. And that's, yeah, go ahead, so, put them on. What many of these individuals testified to. But this was the state's forensic case and their forensic witnesses. Everyone here came and told you that there was nothing, zero, by way of forensic science that connects Aaron Hernandez to this crime. You recall, we sat through 2 weeks of witness after witness saying there's no direct link, there's no fingerprints on this gun to Aaron Hernandez. There's no DNA. There's no DNA to Aaron Hernandez. I can't tie this gun to Aaron Hernandez. None of the print that I got off the SUV was not Aaron Hernandez. I couldn't match it to Aaron Hernandez. There's no GSR that we can link back to Aaron Hernandez. There's no trace evidence or CSI evidence that goes back to Aaron Hernandez. But you know what? You know what's funny about this? Well, it's not funny. You know what's strange about this? Is that the way the state tried their case was all on emotion. They're heavy on emotion and low on evidence. That's why the very beginning of this case was showing you gory pictures of the crime scene to get you riled up. And then in the middle of the case, you remember they paraded these shirts filled with blood to remind you and to get you riled up again. To play on your emotions when the judge specifically will tell you you are to be dispassionate. You're not to base your decision on emotion, you're to base it on the facts, on the evidence. But that's not the game they're playing. No. That's not the case they're trying. You'll remember this witness, Amy Reynolds, told you these shirts, those shirts have no probative value to this case. But they mounted them up for you. And they showed them for you. They put them in plastic bags and put them on boards and everything and brought them before you just to show them to you. Not because they mean anything, not because it contributes anything, not because it's going to help you evaluate and do your job as jurors, but only for the one reason, to get you riled up, to get you to hate him, to get you to squint hard enough so you can see cornrows instead of beads. And what did they end their case with? Dr. Lindstrom, the autopsy. Beginning, middle, end. That's the strategy. Let's get them riled up. Let's tell them a story. And let's let them buy into it. We don't need evidence. All digital forensics, nothing tying to him. Fingerprints, the state fingerprint expert, nothing, no fingerprints on the gun. More computer experts, nothing. Crime scene supervisors, nothing linking at the scene, Aaron Hernandez. All of these. Ballistics. More CSI. Test fire to the gun that doesn't link back to Aaron Hernandez. On and on and on. And when you get done with it, the one guy who was in charge of the entire FBI video unit, who told you we could have recovered that cure video. Remember that? All they had to do, he was already working on the case, to say, hey, Go look at this hard drive and recover this video for us, please. They never asked him to do such a thing. Why? Can you trust them? Should you trust them? Should any citizen accused have to face this kind of justice? When they won't even send what the resources they have to find the truth for you. They end up with nothing. This is why you were told, can you convict if there's no forensic evidence? Can you? Would you please? That takes us to West Palm Beach. Now, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, there's a whole lot in Florida that you don't know about. And I think, based on the way this case was presented, they tried their best to throw more. The whole strategy is, let's throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. What do they get you? What do they bring you first? They bring you a druggie. Someone who admittedly tells you, I was completely partying that entire week, and those days were mushed together. He didn't want to come forward. There's a lot going on in Florida, ladies and gentlemen, where Alexander Bradley specifically told you that he can't recall 2 of the 5 days he was down there. He can't account for it. What does that mean? I can't account for 2 of the 5 days I was down there? He's doing what he does. This individual, I really don't know what he contributed. He had an interesting fashion. Drives a Jaguar, doesn't have a job. I think these 2 birds of a feather. And then he's shot a month later. He shot a month later. And you'll recall, these guys, they're Deontay Thompson's friends. Sometimes people rise above and become successful. They don't forget where they came from. Many times, when you're successful, you realize and you recognize that your past struggles and where you come from define who you are, and are really the core reason why you're so successful. We take adversity and turn it into sometimes something positive. But we don't forget where we came from. And we don't forget people where we came from. And Mr. Thompson is just one of those individuals, just like that. There were 15, 20 guys at night, each of the nights at Tootsie's Lounge. Contrary to what Mr. Bradley told you. Mr. Gargars, the VIP guy, knows who Aaron is, and remembered pretty vividly of both nights that they were there. Mr. Hagan tried to trip him up. Was it a Monday, Tuesday morning, Thursday? No, he remembered each night, and remembered that Aaron doesn't have, VIPs and celebrities, they don't have to pay to go up in the next level. And you saw that in Cure. That's because these bars, these clubs, they want celebrities in their bars because it's advertising. It's a celebrity endorsement of their product. And they want them there. And these 5 guys, not 4, for which Bradley testified to, you know, at what point, when the facts start contradicting Mr. Bradley, at what point do you send that meal back? How many cockroaches do you need in your food before you send it all back? I submit to you, all you need is 1. All you need is 1 reasonable doubt. Especially when Judge Locke is telling you, listen with caution and great care. This guy has an incentive. And all of this is lies. He's lying to you about how many guys are there, who's there. Deontay told you they had like 4 or 5 guys, 4 or 5 cars going there. You have no idea how long Bradley was at Tootsie's. You know his phone was returned, despite the fact that he lied about that. And there are phone records of him calling. There are phone records. Now you can't, you're right, you can't place, I take that back. You can't place a person behind a phone. But his excuses to you is, I didn't have my 2 phones. But there are phone calls. And one person is telling you, one person without a dog in this fight, who hasn't seen Aaron Hernandez in 3-4 years, had limited interaction with him, is telling you, we gave that phone back. But this man is telling you otherwise. Who are you going to believe? The drug dealer or the manager at Tootsie's? This is another person coming forward and giving you a conflict in the evidence, a conflict in what Mr. Bradley is telling you. Lies from beginning to end, ladies and gentlemen. Lies from Boston to Florida. But they're going to ride him. They're going to ride him all the way home. Come on, Rocky. He can't even give you his nickname right. This guy's calling him Rock, but oh, he's Rocky. Little Rocky. He just can't tell you the truth because he's a parasite. He's here, he's got an incentive, and he's lying all over the place. They can dress him up, put his $500 designer shirt on that he didn't work for. We all have to get up sometimes and go to work. People have to get up and go to work even when they don't want to, even when they're not feeling good, even when they just don't feel like it. But this man can prance around with designer shirts and not earn a penny. He's a career criminal. The last 14 years, but now he's got a legitimate trucking business that he's running from jail. We've cleaned him up. He's got a nice Burberry shirt on. The glasses are a really nice touch. Really nice touch. And then this guy testified about a gun that he loaned to Deontay, but took it back before the shooting ever happened. They flew this guy from Florida to come here and tell you that. And they're giving all of them immunity. They're handing out immunity in this case like it's candy on Halloween. Mr. Hagen's the next Oprah Winfrey. You've got immunity. You've got immunity. We all got immunity. Everybody's got immunity. That's not how you build a case. That's not how you present a case. You're not the Oprah Winfrey of immunity. It's absurd. It flies in the face of reality. It doesn't even pass the laugh test. But they will come here and put a man's life in the balance because he's an NFL football player. That's a nice conviction. That's a nice thing to have. Facts be damned. Facts be damned. Let's look at what the other independent witnesses told you about what happened in Florida. You recall the 2 gentlemen that worked outside the warehouse area? The warehouse area. It's an industrial warehouse park where this all happened. That's where drug deals happen in Florida. Where they bring in cars where you can't see them, things are going on down in warehouses. No people are walking by, especially at that time of night. It's Candyland for drug dealers. South Florida. And these guys tell you they hear one shot. It's loud. It's not muffled inside a car. They can hear it from inside the building. And all of the evidence found at the scene tells you otherwise. There's a shell casing, ladies and gentlemen. It's a semi-automatic weapon. He didn't get shot inside of a car. Ignore the obvious and just believe his story. three-legged pony is telling you he was shot inside of a car, but yet the physical evidence tells you otherwise. The blood doesn't lie. Look at this blood spatter. Shot up to the other side of the PVC pipes. His hat that he says he was wearing. The shell casing all outside near this area. And what's unique, look at where this area is. This is right here, where a car cannot even pull up because of the cement blocks. And he walked down this alley. He was missing for 5 minutes. Remember, that's what Kevin Riddle told you. And so did Mingo Blake. Mr. Mingo Blake, hardworking man, not like this man, is at work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to deliver, to drive his truck. And this man is out doing his thing. He hears the shot, walks by this alleyway and doesn't see him. They looked all over the place for him for about 5 minutes. What's he doing? Is he hiding his phone so the police can't see who he was doing his drug deals with? Does he hide a gun? Does he hide his money? His drugs? What? What's he doing for 5 minutes? And every EMT person told you he was surprisingly alert. But he wants to tell you he's not a snitch. What's he doing right here? He's not a snitch. No, he is livid with Aaron for introducing them to these Florida guys. He almost got killed because of these Florida guys. You don't mess around with these Florida boys at all. Or you get shot, you get killed. That's what this man does. He lives by the sword. And he wants you to ignore the evidence. Ignore this. Ignore this. Ignore this. Ignore all of this. And believe me, I was shot inside a car. Every piece of evidence just lies to you. All of the actual evidence, the crime scene photos, it clearly shows him walking around. He's lying to you. He's not shot inside of the car. He's shot right there near the fence. The lies carry you all the way to Florida. And what's interesting is his first words to the police. A couple black guys shot me, and some Hispanics. He knows. He knows he can't rat anybody out. He knows they'll come and kill him. And now he wants you to think doing a civil suit is not snitching, and that and basically his method of justice is he's going to kill Aaron. Well, yeah, he's pissed at Aaron for almost getting him killed. Literally he could have gotten killed, yeah. But he's smart. He's smart. He's going to get money from Aaron first. Why kill him? Let me get money from him. Let me extort him for money, and then I'll kill him. You can conclude, ladies and gentlemen, that that was his plan all along, based on his testimony and those text messages, all of those self-serving text messages, where he's clearly trying to get money. A dead Aaron Hernandez doesn't bring a payday. But if I get my money first, then I'll kill him with my Mac 11 and my chopper. And my bulletproof vest. What does he need a bulletproof vest for? What does he need these weapons for? And they don't even go and get it. They're making a deal with Alexander Bradley, a known drug dealer, a convicted drug dealer. They know what kinds of weapons he runs with. And they leave this on the streets with this man. Why? Because Rocky's going to ride him home. Let's go, Rocky. Rocky's going to get them an NFL baller. This is unacceptable. And then what does he do after cutting his deal? He still picks up with more gun charges. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. It does not matter that you're a violent drug dealer. We're going to ride you home because you're going to get us an NFL football player. Who has motive here? You'll recall the detective. They did zero in terms of investigating this case, but yet they're bringing it up in a Boston courtroom. They didn't even go search. They went milling about. Remember that? A milling about search. Right down the alleyway. There's no crime scene tape there. Doing nothing. This man does the right thing. He gets his tape recorder and records Mr. Bradley right away, unlike the detectives here in Boston. But they don't do anything. But they still want to prosecute that case here. They want to pick it up and bring it here. Something that happens in Florida that doesn't get investigated, they bring it here. That's outrageous. It's piling it on. It's throwing it all against the wall to see what sticks. If you hate Aaron, if you see, oh, look at this. Look at the people he hangs out with. Look at this. But they're not even his friends. They're Deontay Thompson's friends. Look at all of this. Look at how he's a bad guy. Look at his tattoos. That's absurd. They don't want you to base your decision on evidence. They want you to base it on prejudice. They want to say to you, he's got tattoos. He's different than us. He's a celebrity. He's a baller. He's different than us. Remember Mr. Hagen's opening statement about the two worlds? And how he's so lucky and because he's a celebrity and he's got all of these things, but we don't. That's what they're basing their case on. That's how it's all packaged up for you. That's how it's presented to you. Not with evidence. To the contrary, ignore the evidence. Ignore that all of the evidence in West Palm Beach shows the shooting occurred by the fence. Believe Bradley. It happened in the car. Really. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it comes at this point. It comes to this point where there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. And this is the time you jump off the Bradley bandwagon. If there ever was a time, this is the time you go. The excuse that you're given after he says to his lawyer, his private confidential conversation with his lawyer that no one, that man must take with him to the grave, is, now you sure once I withdraw this lawsuit, that won't be held on perjury after I tell the court the truth about me not really recalling, about me not recalling anything about who shot me. He deleted this message. This was never to see the light of day. You were never going to see this. They certainly weren't going to tell you about it. They weren't going to put this on the stand and be upfront with you and tell you. He told his lawyer in a private conversation. That's protected. That lawyer takes an oath. The attorney-client privilege is one of the most sacred things in law, because it allows you to maneuver your client through the system in the just way. The lawyer then is entrusted as an officer of the court to be able to maneuver you and not put you on the stand to commit perjured testimony. That is his obligation. That is the oath that they take. And it is an important right for you to have. But it's waivable. And when he signed that waiver to get that deal of a lifetime, he thought he deleted this message. He thought it would never come up. He thought this message would never see the light of day. He is a perjurer. And you need not any more information than that alone. That is your reasonable doubt for the entire case. He swore, even if you want to even stretch your imagination and believe he's talking about the civil suit. No, he's talking about telling the court the truth about not recalling anything about who shot him. He's telling his lawyer it's the truth. He's not lying about something in the 3rd grade. He's not lying about something that happened with Johnny at the bowling alley. He's lying about this case, this shooting. And he's telling his lawyer what the truth is. How can you accept that? How can this ever see the light of day in a courtroom? How can this man ever take the stand in a courtroom when another person's life hangs in the balance? That's outrageous. It's unconscionable, and it's something you should never accept. I tell you, this case is riddled with reasonable doubt all over the place. But this stands on top as the cherry on the cake. This stands atop and stands alone. There's not much for you to deliberate about. There really isn't. The judge will tell you when it comes to witnesses that are immune. That where a witness testifies under a grant of immunity, you should examine the witness's testimony with great care and caution. I've told you about that. A defendant cannot be convicted based solely on the testimony of an immunized witness. That's all there is here, is this man's testimony. And you can't base your convictions. The law is even protecting this from ever happening. The law would never anticipate something like this. But before you even from the get-go, the law is telling you, you can't base your conviction on this. There must be something to corroborate it. But there isn't. The bullet casing's outside. 3 witnesses are telling you he's at the W. 3 other witnesses are telling you it looks like a woman or someone with cornrows.
Mr. Baez, I'm going to ask the screen be blanked.
Yes, all of this is happening. All of this is happening before your eyes. But they want to bring this man. We put together a list of a little compilation of some of Mr. Bradley's testimony. And it's riddled with lies. Take a look at this again. Remember your own recollection of the evidence. But take a brief look at this for a moment. As we look at Rocky.
My memory?
So your memory gets better with time, right?
Oh, it does. Absolutely.
So,
I'm not sure.
did you run searches that morning?
I don't recall running searches. I don't remember exactly.
Was it a year ago?
No, I don't believe it was a year ago. I don't remember. I don't recall if I was under oath at the time of the proffer.
Okay.
No, I don't recall that.
Okay.
No, I don't recall giving that answer.
Okay.
I don't recall deleting any messages.
Okay.
Specifically.
Now 726-3749.
I'm not sure if that's my number. I don't recall arriving on the 8th. If in fact I was down there for 5 days, I can only account for 3. That would be correct. I don't recall, but if that's what it says, then that's accurate.
Right?
I don't remember if I had my hat on when I got shot. I don't know the exact reason that he shot me. No, I don't recall ever going like back and forth and that. I don't recall. I mean, I may have. I don't recall exactly how long I set the car ride to. I don't recall any of the message I deleted. That's a long time ago.
Okay,
Do you know about how long it was that you lost sight of it?
I can't exact it. No, not exactly.
The words that you just spoke moments ago to the jury are different than these words, right?
Correct. No, I don't recall, but if that's what it says, then that's what I said.
Okay. And this again is a situation where your memory does not get better with time, right?
Overruled. You may answer that.
I guess in this instance, that would be correct.
We know, because what you're trying to do is stay one step ahead of the law.
That's correct.
Those are Rocky's greatest hits. That's the center of their case, their chief witness, as they call it. That's the foundation of this prosecution. He perjures himself, tells lie after lie after lie, and admits evidence before you where it is clearly false and erroneous. I want to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, by telling you a little bit about reasonable doubt. And forgive me, I know from the day you met me, I've been talking to you about reasonable doubt and and what it entails. But one of the things that you must realize when it comes to reasonable doubt is that, as I've mentioned, it is the highest burden in American legal jurisprudence. And
Counsel, I'll instruct on reasonable.
yes, sir. Now, one of the things that the court will advise you on is that you have to have an abiding conviction of guilt.
Counsel, I will give the instruction.
Yes, Your Honor. As it relates to reasonable doubt, this case is entirely caught up with nothing but doubt. You don't even get to a strong probability of guilt, which is what what Judge Locke will instruct you on. He's going to tell you what reasonable doubt means. That you have to have the abiding conviction of guilt. That it's not even enough for them to show you a strong probability of guilt. And that's not what you saw in this case. There is no strong probability of guilt. They didn't even reach that. But clearly, ladies and gentlemen, when you get to someone who is clearly lying to you, time in and time out, again and again and again, and a prosecution that comes forward to you and gives you evidence, half the story, not telling you about Brian Kwan, not telling you about the street sweeper, not telling you about the 3 people who saw the woman or man with cornrows in the car, not telling you about the people who see Aaron Hernandez over at the W. All of these facts, they scream at you, and they're telling you, he's innocent. He didn't commit this crime. He is not guilty of what he is charged with. And they can pack on and pile on all of the charges that they want. But to bring forward a trial just to get an NFL football player is disgraceful. It's a disgrace to the cause of justice. And we're going to ask all of you, both individually and collectively, to return a verdict of not guilty. There is not much to debate when you're basing everything on this man's word. There is not anything that's going to tell you that you can trust this man. A moral certainty is the level that you must base your decision on when it comes to reasonable doubt. Some of the most important decisions. This is one of the most important decisions you will make in your life because you have another life that hangs in the balance. And the burden is so high for that one reason. The law is your guide. The law will tell you where to go with this. And that you must base it all on important matters because why? It's irrevocable. Once you make this decision, you can't take it back. You can't say tomorrow morning when you wake up, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't think so. You can't do that. It's a decision that you will make that is irrevocable. And for that reason, the standard is so high. For that reason, you have to have that abiding conviction of guilt. That the charge is true. And in a case such as this, blocking out all the noise, or it doesn't matter. What matters is your opinions. You're the finders of fact. What was true to you? What does the citizen accused deserve? True evidence. You can't trust this man. You can't ride him home. That's not justice. Again, I thank you all for your attention. And I thank you for your service on behalf of both sides. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as soon as you can clear a path, you'll take your morning recess.
La condena por asesinato de Aaron Hernandez fue restablecida el miércoles en un fallo radical de la Corte más alta de Massachusetts, que elimina el principio legal que hizo que la estrella de la NFL fuera inocente a los ojos de la ley después de que se quitó la vida en prisión. La Corte Suprema de Justicia determinó por unanimidad que la norma legal que anuló la condena de Hernández está obsoleta y ya no está en consonancia con las circunstancias de la vida contemporánea. Ordenó que se restableciera la condena de Hernández y que se aboliera la práctica para casos futuros. El fallo no afecta a casos pasados. La ex estrella de los New England Patriots, los Patriotas de Nueva Inglaterra, fue condenada en 2015 por quitarle la vida al jugador de fútbol americano semiprofesional Odin Lloyd. 2 años después, el joven de 27 años se quitó la vida en su celda días después de ser absuelto de la mayoría de los cargos en otro caso de doble asesinato. Un juez desestimó la condena de Hernández ese año, citando el principio legal que sostiene que un acusado condenado en un juicio que muere antes de que se escuche una apelación ya no debe ser considerado culpable a los ojos de la ley, devolviendo así el caso a su estado previo al juicio. La Fiscalía apeló entonces y pidió que se restableciera la condena. Según la doctrina arraigada en siglos de derecho inglés, una condena no debe considerarse definitiva hasta que una apelación pueda determinar si se cometieron errores que privaron al acusado de un juicio justo, dicen los expertos legales. La forma en que los estados manejan casos como el de Hernández varía ampliamente. Algunos, como Massachusetts, anulan las condenas, mientras que otros estados desestiman la apelación del acusado y la condena se mantiene. Otros permiten que los tribunales de apelaciones consideren el caso de un acusado fallecido, dijeron los fiscales.